was trying to, as early as, like, you know, turn 5, he's at 28 health, says, I'm not going to even leave up a single 3-3 on the board because I know I might going to need this health. And then end up being pretty important moving forward. So Fr0zen's situational recognition of what he needs to be doing in a tough spot is of the best in Hearthstone. And NoHandsGamer has to be, you know, thinking about the amount of pressure. Already starting off with a font of power, but, you know, he's really looking for other additional power cards like we saw in Counters Flow, which seems to be in almost every mage opening hand on Splushers Week. And I'm not sure why that's happening exactly, but it does seem very consistent. I think we've seen only 1 or 2 games where mage hasn't started with that card.
Yeah, it's actually been insane. Even like looking across the other regions, it just feels like mage is hitting in Counters Flow more often than not. And there's such a huge difference in mulligan win rate from a Counters Flow to every other card in the deck, right? Almost to the point where you could justify in every single game hard mulliganing for Counters Flow. That's how high of a win rate it is. Obviously, you know, Font of Power has a lot of value. Same with Refreshing Spring Water, Devolving Missiles in some matchups, but it's just kind of insane how much the deck relies on that card to hit those high win rates. Okay.
Fallen Hero.
Yeah, has a 2-drop, which is not always the case when you play Font of Power. He'd much rather have, again, being Counters Flow instead of a 2-drop, but nice consolation prize. Oh, Mancrick! Whew.
Mancrick on 3, or rather on 2 mana, but able to play it very quickly, setting up into a turn 3. And more importantly, just getting ahead of what Mage can do to leverage their board, because this will incentivize NoHandsGamer to trade and hero power. Although he does have the brain freeze with the ability to, you know, finish off his opponent if he had an extra combo activator. So that's got to be a little bit annoying for NoHandsGamer, wishing he had a bit ability to deal with this Mancrick. Because like we talked about, one way for the Priest to be able to start getting the edge over Mage is keeping a board sticking and repetitively getting that damage in. But there are some cards that Mage can have at their disposal to really disrupt that. You know, cheap removal, devolving missiles, and other ways to really make it hurt. So all these buff cards that Priest has, Fr0zen has to time it very carefully as well.
And Counters Flow picked up. No card draw, though. So nothing to really follow this up. I wonder if he wants to just get it online now to go for it, or if he wants to try and clean up more of the board and not leave this Venomous Scorpion up and just get the Brain Freeze out of the way and then roll into a Pexus Blast in the following turn. Hard to say, but I think getting the Counters Flow online as quick as possible is pretty beneficial. And even if Fr0zen buffs this Venomous Scorpion, you're not too concerned because he hasn't dealt a significant enough damage yet. I guess you could always see what's in the box first. Huh.
Shooting Star, Oasis Ally, Conjure Mana Biscuit. Something, you know, something that's pretty nice about Oasis Ally is it makes it harder for the Priest to want to trade into it. Not to mention, cards like Hysteria ends up being a very interesting activator of Oasis Ally and sometimes complicates the board further. Fr0zen immediately activates another Wind Portal, trying to go for a nice trade. Probably just going to go ahead and kill off with his Scorpion and make sure that he has board control. Although, not sure if Fr0zen was thinking about a different game plan here whatsoever. Maybe instead of using Flash Heal on his own face, he might use it on a Sethek Veilweaver to continue to cycle and potentially get a more powerful spell. Because while Fr0zen does have pretty decent cards, right? He's got Ysera at the top end, he's got all this AoE, he's got Palm Reading. He doesn't exactly have the cards that really make players get punished hard for leaving minions on a Priest board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still ends the turn with board control, which is the important thing. I was trying to think if there were any Priest or Mage taunt minions. There's a lot of taunts at 5 that Plague Maul the Rotting could have been punished him if he left that up, but he just went ahead and traded. Mazaki's interesting. Actually just straight gas with the Font of Power. Nothing with like immediate board presence, but spell damage can do a lot. Lab partner Misaki and Egwin.
Oh my goodness. Oh my
If he hadn't killed Plague Maw, oh my god.
Yeah,
would have been a teacher's pet that resummoned itself after.
Would have been very devastating indeed. Fr0zen's going to start with the Scorpid, picks up options for additional discovers with the Renew, which I'm a fan of. I don't know if cards like Apotheosis or Shadow Death are particularly applicable, although it does end up having some targets on his opponent's side. NoHandsGamer with a surprising amount of minions in the hand. We call it Spell Mage, but Font of Power being able to generate 3 random minions and oftentimes hitting powerful legendaries that are in NoHandsGamer's hand. Going to be really tricky for Fr0zen to try and diffuse this, as the mounting pressure is going to get really difficult to handle. And Fr0zen does have AoE, but this secret from Oasis Ally, I'm sure, is going to continue to make it a little bit trickier, forcing him to play things out of order and suboptimally in order to try to see if he can deduce what his opponent's secret is.
So interesting to me. I feel like NoHands had an opportunity to go for a pretty big, like, potential pop-off turn there, like with Misaki and Brain Freeze or something along those lines. I get that, you know, trying to force his opponent to play into what the secret could possibly be.
Yeah. It's one of these situations where NoHands is resource. Oh gosh, a King Mugla pops out. That's quite possibly the best result. I really hard pressed to find one immediately that would be situationally better for this. I guess if you really are greedy, you usually think that Priest has a hard time removing, so your opponent could have Shadow Word Death. But yeah, in terms of raw stat power, Mugla is the best here. And now Fr0zen has to deal with 8 power that he has somehow increased onto the board. At the beginning of this turn, it was just a teacher's pet. Palm Reading again, discount his entire hand to be very cheap. That is a Shadow Word Death, but he does not have the mana to play it because it costs 1 after the discount.
Oh.
Yeah, I agree with this. Have to clear off part of the board. You just can't take the damage because then you're susceptible to the burn plan. And we were talking about how NoHands, his situation with his resource count is very proactive, not very reactive. So if Fr0zen was finding a way to get ahead on the board, NoHands would actually be struggling a little bit here. However, because he's fought for that board control and that Oasis Ally being very annoying, I mean, these are just really difficult minions to deal with. High health, death rattles.
Misaki is incredibly difficult to deal with. He has to be able to do 8 damage. Hysteria doesn't kill it. Well, he can Hysteria and then Condemn. From NoHands' perspective, obviously, he's thinking, okay, Hysteria by itself doesn't kill it. But this is not really that big of a resource from NoHands, right? It's 1/3 of a Font of Power that he played that turn and got out the second Condemn plus a Hysteria. So I think he's got to be quite happy with the position that he's in this game. Fr0zen does have some incentive to keep emptying his hand, though, because he has the Ysera loaded up for turn 9. But he's got to make sure that he's in an okay position on the board and with his life total before he does end up playing that.
Theo Conjure back into rotation in 2021 thanks to the core set. Discover a spell. Encounter's Flow, Potion of Illusion, Arcane. It's like you're talking about value, look no further than Potion of Illusion. Encounter's Flow isn't as important given that he's already played it. So Arcane Intellect, just to keep up the resources. TJ mentioned it earlier. Really important for the card draw. Keep up the resources. More importantly, NoHandsGamer wants to find power cards to find a way to leverage his hand. He has a hand that's pretty good at being proactive. Well, Fr0zen looks for the Scorpid and sees if there's any opportunity to bring back the board state. How good is Rally in this spot, TJ?
So he has had a Sethic die no one cost, and then he's had a Venomous Scorpid die and 2 Mancrix die. So
one Mancrix died. The other one got transformed.
No, hasn't he had 2 Mancrix died outside of the one that got transformed? Doesn't he have 3 in his deck?
You might be right. Okay, either way, he has those available in this pool, and I don't know if that's strong enough in his mind. Gonna buff his Murloc, his Tiny Fin. Wow. Okay.
Still accepting 6. That's tough, but at least he has a flash heal.
Yeah, so I think from Fr0zen's perspective, obviously he would love to deal with his opponent's board efficiently, but I think what he wants to do is set up for the best possible Ysera to come down, because his turn 9 is looking very weak if he's not able to play Ysera. So all cannons are firing in order to pave the way for the Ysera Dreamboat to arrive. But it's going to be really difficult to out-resource NoHands despite getting 10 mana worth of cards from that dragon. An additional Devolving Missiles, number 2. Powers down the Tiny Fin back to its original form, no longer a Super Saiyan. And this is going to be really tough for Fr0zen to dig himself out of this hole. There's just too much going on. He just has too many resources.
Yeah, at least he didn't hit 1 each with the Devolving Missiles and not even have the Poisonous to be able to answer this. But yeah, this is a rough situation for Fr0zen. He's got next to nothing in his hand. Only hope is to try and clear the board. Use Nightmare, perhaps? He doesn't know the secret, though.
Yeah, so if you want to test the secret, Flash Heal first. Seize it, counterspell, that's why he did it. Trade both of the minions remaining on board available to him. Nice thing about Egwin, no minions in the deck as far as he knows.
Thank you for constructing me.
Replicatotron. Actually, not very good minion for NoHandsGamer.
No.
Because things like his Egwin and Environmental will become worse. Replicatotron, more of a fun meme card, if you will. Not really a competitive one we've seen in quite some time. However, we have seen some weird scenarios where it's a little bit tricky to deal with. NoHands plays the Incanter's Flow immediately and rips more cards. Arcane Intellect should pay for itself with the amount of discount you get on the spells.
Yep, he still has both Refreshing Spring Waters in his deck too, plus a Fireball, Runed Orb, Primordial Studies. He's got a lot of stuff still to do, and plenty of time to do it. He's not under any pressure. The Ysera's a little worrying just because of, you know, maybe the threat of like Apotheosis, but he's seen Apotheosis already. He knows that there's 4 Dream cards in hand. 1 card from the deck, and then 1 card that was randomly generated.
Oh my goodness. Armor Scrapper coming out to the board, making it difficult for Fr0zen to get through. It just seemed like the 4 or 5 taunt generation is the bane of Fr0zen's existence, and it's not getting any better. Replicatotron, of course, showing you why it's not a great card for NoHandsGamer's side, no matter what he was doing, unless he was willing to trade in his Replicatotron, was going to lose it. Arguable that maybe he should have. But I suppose he's still keeping a higher amount of power onto his board, 6 instead of 4.
Yeah. Still a lot of burst in hand.
Trying to see if he could get Oasis Ally, but
I thought it was another one.
Yeah, it looked like Replicatotron number 3.
That's the Renowned Performer. Still actually pretty difficult to deal with since it summons 1/1 taunts when it dies. Fr0zen's just in a whole heap of trouble right now. I think this is also rigged fair game, right? Because he's tested for everything else except for Ice Barrier, and there's no reason why NoHands would pick Ice Barrier. Could burn some burn here. but picks up the Fireball, Combustion, and then one more
Lethal.
card, Ruined Orb. And
Just
Yep,
spell
that's
damage
lethal.
plus fireballs. It should be
Yep.
enough to wrap it up, and that's going to be game number one. Very one-sided, no real amount of threats generated from Fr0zen's side. We talked about how it's going to be really important for Priest to do that in order to win, and yet Fr0zen was never able to really truly take a strong initiative. NoHandsGamer takes a very chill game one. Just shows you why Mage is considered to be the leading candidate. As much as, there were some conversations in other regions like, hey, are we approaching Specialist from a perspective of, doing our due diligence, or are we just kind of getting a little bit too, I guess people are just very reductionist. They're like, it's Mage is the best class. Why would I play anything else? There are no counters to a Mage that has every type of tool and resources. Some people are saying that. And I think this kind of game shows a good case for why that is. It's a really powerful class. It's an extremely good deck at almost every kind of scenario, and you always have a chance, even in the darkest of hours.
yeah, it's a deck that can just, it even feels like it has so many win conditions, right? Like, No Hands won a lot with just minions there and used the spells as support, which is not always the case. I do think that the play at the end was a little sloppy from No Hands. I honestly think that knowing that Dream is in the hand and going for rigged fair game anyway, Fireball was the only burn he had left in his deck outside of the Masks of Cthulhu in his hand, and there was a high health minion on board, right? That he had no like devolving missiles for. So if he burns Fireball in that instance, he would burn 2 cards if Dream came out and he didn't get hit in the face. He already has 2 refreshing Spring Waters in his deck to keep drawing cards. So if he burns that second Fireball, maybe it's tough for him to win from there because Mask of Cthulhu is not reliable burst like Fireball is. Overall, though, I think no matter what he chooses, he wins there. I just think that he was so far ahead and gave himself that small chance to maybe miss out on that last piece of burn that he needed to find in order to win the game. But now we will move over to the secondary. I don't think Fr0zen's going to switch. He does have a deck with Cthulhu, but it also adds South Sea Scoundrel and Onyx Mage Scribe, and honestly, you really don't want to accelerate the pace of the game with South Sea Scoundrel in a lot of cases. That's usually for the mirror.
Right. We didn't exactly cover this much, but Fr0zen decided to not really have a tertiary deck in his lineup. I'm not even necessarily sure if you told him beforehand, like, hey, you can put any cards you want in your deck against Mage, if he would necessarily feel like he would still switch a bunch of his cards. We've seen that yesterday where some players may have had good secondary decks that had cards effective against Priest, but it took too much from their primary game plan, so they felt like it was still not that good. Oh,
Yep.
man. You know, it is good. This brings me back. Arcanologist drawing the secret on turn
Wow.
2. Very clean turn here for NoHandsGamer. Fawn of Power on 1. Arcanologist on 2. Having a pretty reliable secret on 3.
Yep. And then Ajanda's Barav on 6. I don't care what happens in between. It's good.
Question mark, question mark, question mark.
Yeah. Yep. What's another interesting tidbit about Fr0zen, like not deciding to bring in a tertiary deck is that last game, that was the first game that Fr0zen's lost all weekend. He's 3-0, 6-0 game score, and he queued his primary deck all 6 times. So he's just 6-0 with just his primary deck. He has that much confidence in it. So got to be feeling a little bit nervous right now. Got his first loss. It wasn't even that close of a game. It didn't feel like he was ever close to turning the corner. And even though there's no encounters full start here for No Hands, I like the way that his hand is shaping up. He's got minions to be able to contest. He's got burst. Rigged fair game is just free card draw against Priest, essentially. Because they rarely have the board, and if they do, they're rarely attacking your face.
NoHands having quite a slow start to his game. That's okay, because Fr0zen is also experiencing similar struggles. As right now he picks up the palm reading, Card that's normally very important for Priest to start reacting and controlling the board. But all of this time being given to No Hands is exactly what he was looking for. Insight potentially can change some of that. Finds Wand Maker, not exactly the card that I think Fr0zen was looking for, but it'll do.
Yeah, I'm sure he was looking for Sethic because he had... he could have, if he was looking for just any minion, he could have palm reading first and then incited. I guess he could have done that anyway, right? Because then if he hit Sethic, it still costs 0. He's still able to Holy Smite and Renew on top of that. So maybe he just wanted the potential for, if he hits Sethic, to then discover spells with Sethic that might be more expensive and then palm reading after when he has more spells and more efficient spells to reduce the cost. So I guess that makes sense.
Alar comes out of the Apex's Blast. It's a legendary minion that hatches. It's a Phoenix, comes back. I'm wondering if Fr0zen can just kill this off and immediately destroy that egg. A little bit annoying though. Perhaps palm reading or focused will. Either way, dealing with this threat is going to be important. Fr0zen taking just a little bit too much damage and pressure. And it's going to get worse. No Hands has 2 fireballs in hand. He's got ways to play both of them as soon as next turn because he has the Mana Biscuit allowing him to restore 2 crystals. The game plan for No Hands is very straightforward. For Fr0zen, it's equally as straightforward, but it's just so uncomfortable given that he does not have the resources and the ability to respond to this. He does have a couple of other tricks up his sleeve. He could, for example, choose to play Raise Dead to look for additional resources to see if he could find like the optimal card. But this is not pretty. You can see the look on Fr0zen's face. He's very uncomfortable with this situation.
Okay.
Almost a weird sequence of events where Fr0zen decided the last second to use Renew, but had he did, he would have found Holy Smite, which allowed him to keep his minion on board for his Wand Maker. But by trading the Wand Maker, he does get the ability to use Raise Dead. So there was layers to that decision that isn't exactly clear cut.
Yeah. Well, it's just a little bit of a messy turn. But ultimately, he came out okay from it, right? Was able to get rid of the Alar, find some resources, fit the Raise Dead in without being in kind of that situation where you're desperate for some type of minion to dig for an out. Like the choice here for the 4/4 to be the illusion. A lot of times players will pick the stealth minion because you can't direct damage at it, right? But that would have been a pretty easy Hysteria clear for Fr0zen, and also if there's a Condemn, Holy Nova, anything along those lines, you want to keep the higher power minion protected.
Yeah, Fr0zen's not afraid of this just yet. Draconic Studies finds an opportunity for some decent value dragons all the way to high value dragons. Chooses Crimson Hothead. Now, I was thinking about Skeletal Dragon, but I think it's just a little bit too expensive, and Fr0zen wants to be able to play a higher tempo onto the board here instead of simply plopping a minion, hoping it survives, letting Mage be able to get past it and push damage. Like so. No Hands using Mask of Cthulhu, killing off the Scorpid, and being able to push damage here if he so chooses with his Stranglethorn Tiger. Oh, okay. Setting up 2-turn lethal?
Is it though?
Well, yeah, if his Tiger survives and he has 2 fireballs, he has lethal.
I mean, if his Tiger survived, then he wouldn't need to ping. He would have 2-turn lethal. Even if Fr0zen healed face, he would have 17 through double fireball. So He must be thinking of something, maybe to dump his hand to fit in the pit for the Contra Mana Biscuit, but I don't think that really had a purpose. I don't think there's any break point that ping matters.
It could. If, Renew, for example, was the only thing that he healed, it would be a situation where it might have. I wasn't exactly sure about it, but, it doesn't seem to have paid off right here. And maybe in his mind, he felt like it was an important card and he did need hand space. It's not jumping out to me immediately. But I can appreciate a creative play like that. NoHandsGamer has to deal with this Crimson Hothead, does have the second copy of Devolving Missiles that he drew, so he can part ways with one. And Fr0zen, Dawngrasp hits the board, setting up additional card draw, freezing Fr0zen's minion. Fr0zen indeed. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Is it time?
The flash heals, though, just have so much value because burn is NoHand's main plan here.
Hysteria is quite a risk to play.
You could just Hysteria the 0-4 just for a free cycle.
That's fair.
I must consider.
Yeah, that's fair. But what could you really get for 2 mana that you would really want otherwise?
Oh, man.
Hysteria would either kill the...
Can you Hysteria a minion without attack? I'm pretty sure you can. I'm pretty sure you can. Yeah, you can. Whoa. Whoa.
Fr0zen with the double flash heal onto a Sethic Veilweaver and then
Onto a Sethic. That's so interesting. If he picks up Lab Partner here, it is lethal.
Yeah, it's very
Primordial
close.
Studies for Lab Partner. If he hits Lab Partner, then it is lethal. Exactly 17.
It would be super quick. Of a series. Quick series.
I don't know why he wouldn't just heal himself a little bit. Especially since NoHands used the Conjured Mana Biscuit to ping, right? He's obviously setting up for a break point.
He's looking for Holy Smite, I think, purely at that stage. He was very desperate.
Well, if he was
Either
desperate for
way-
Holy Smite, he should have just Hysteria'd the Fr0zen, right? Because then he loses his Sethic, which is the end of the train anyway, and he takes the 3 damage off the board. And if he was looking for Holy Smite in that instance, like it's only taking off 3 damage from the board. So flash healing your face, yes, you have 1 less spell in hand, but that negates that 3 damage also. So I don't know. Yeah. Kind of a weird ending to the game. The Conjured Mana Biscuit to make hand space. Don't think it was necessary that turn, but I like the way NoHands played the rest of the game. And then Fr0zen just trying to desperately cycle with his Sethic Veilweaver and leaving himself open to some burn.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where I think he wanted to try and go for optimistic scenarios, recognizing that he was in a bad spot. But I mean, this is just what Mage is doing so powerfully. It is a burn combo deck that tries to piece together a lot of his damage while having minimal amounts of pressure on board and being able to leverage that to make up that distance. There's just so much damage coming out from Mage these days, thanks to their wide variety of damage spells. And with that, NoHandsGamers yet again in the finals. 2 out